Kimberly Geiser from Enamel Guild Northeast. I'm just going to take a second here to go live on Facebook. Hold on a sec. I don't think that's working. Luckily, we have enough bandwidth on Zoom for everybody. If I can sort that out after we get started, I'll do that. I'm Kimberly Geiser, president of Enamel Guild Northeast. Thank you for joining us today for our panel discussion. This is following up the opening of our online exhibition called Under Fire 3, which can be found on enamelguildnortheast.org. Should be up there indefinitely, so if you haven't seen it yet, you can tune in tomorrow for that. We're joined tonight by our jurors and our moderator for the panel. Topic of the panel is what's up with Enamels today. So panelists joining us are coming from Southport, England, Ruth Ball. Ruth is an experienced self-employed designer maker specializing in enamels, engraving, and enamel painting. She produces a variety of artifacts ranging in scale from jewelry, small objects, and wall-based panels. She's achieved many top prizes in the Royal Society of Arts and the Platinum competitions. Coming to us from Greenville, North Carolina, we have Mi-Sook Hur. She's an award-winning enamelist, metalsmith, and professor in the School of Art and Design at East Carolina University. Her work focuses on images inspired by nature, and she explores the modern studies of Limoges enamel. Sienna Patti joins us from the Berkshires in Massachusetts. Sienna founded Sienna Patti Contemporary in 1998 and specializes in contemporary studio jewelry and artists that use craftsmanship as an intellectual and structural vehicle for their ideas. A leading figure in studio jewelry, Patti has lectured extensively at universities and museums, as well as contributed to multiple publications. And moderator for us tonight is Bella Neyman. Bella is an independent curator and writer specializing in contemporary art jewelry. From 2014 to 2018, she was the director of the gallery at Reinstein Ross, a New York-based gallery specializing in contemporary jewelry. She's currently working, she's the co-founder of New York City Jewelry Week and has been on the board of Art and Jewelry Forum since 2013. She is coming to us from Brooklyn. And just before I turn it over to the panelists, I want to announce our Jurors' Choice Award winners. And I'm going to share my screen and show some slides. The winner of the third place prize with a piece called Promise Me You Won't Forget is Alejandra Salinas from San Antonio, Texas. The second place prize goes to Myra Mimlich Gray. The name of the piece is Taped Picture. She's coming to us from Stone Ridge, New York. And first place prize winner from Ariella Har Evan. The piece is titled Altar, and she is from Shaker Heights, Ohio. Congratulations to all of you. I hope you're all on the call with us. I'm just going to stop this share and put up some slides. I'm going to be viewing the slides in the background while the panel is talking. Can everybody see that? Can everybody see that? No? I'm sorry. Trying to sort this out. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to the panel. Bella is here. Bella is our moderator for tonight. Welcome, everybody.
Hi, good evening. Thanks everyone for joining us. Looking at the number of participants who are here with us tonight, I think it's almost all of the applicants, which is really incredibly exciting. So thank you for spending your Sunday evening with us. And of course, congratulations to the 3 winners of the Juror Choice Awards. You know, looking at the presentation as we were preparing for this, I'm sure it was an incredibly tough decision, and I can't wait, you know, to speak with the jurors and of course hear from them this evening. But of course, I just congratulate all of you who, you know, participated this year and who applied. It's been such an incredibly challenging year for all, and it's so wonderful to see such a robust group of participants. So with that, good evening to the panelists. Mi-Sook, Sienna Patti, Ruth Ball. It's really great to be here with all of you. I wish we were sitting in a room somewhere together where I can actually get a chance to see all of you, as well as see all, you know, the audience. But I guess for now, this is what we got. So I wanted to dive right in and really, you know, ask you, first of all, I think one of the benefits of doing all of, you know, everything virtually this year is the fact that we can open up the discussion to, and not just discussion, but also the exhibitions to people from all over the world. And it's really exciting that for this exhibition this year, there were entries from 9 different countries and 26 states were represented. So I wanted to hear from you, the jurors. What were some of the themes that you saw present in this year's applicants? You know, I'm happy to have, you know, either one of the 3 of you jump in. This really is meant to be more of a conversation. So whoever feels like answering first. So what were the themes that you saw present in this year's work? Yeah. Sienna, do you want to go first?
Why did I think that that was coming? Well, a perfect example is Natalie Arrea's work, which was just right in front of us. There were certainly works that had been made recently and reflected where we are right now culturally with COVID. A lot of sort of, I'm home, I'm marking time, this is how I'm thinking. But of course, not every work was a recent work. So I would say that though thematically, some of that was addressed, you know, I noticed in particular, for me and what I'm looking for and at, I noticed that there was quite a few works that were dealing with enameling conceptually. So historically, for example, Ariela's work, they were dealing with thinking of using the material to tell a story, but using it also in somewhat of a historical way or with historical references. And I think that there's some elements of enameling that not requires that, but that it sort of gives weight to the use of that material. I also loved that I saw objects and some sculpture in this. Jan Harrell's work that we're looking at right now, it's not something I know a lot about, so I found that being able to see that was really nice. There was also quite a lot of Kelly Miller that we're looking at, sort of a very, almost a pop art influence that I saw in the enameling and that we talked a little bit about when we were jurying.
Yeah, I'm going to add some more from my observation to what the Sienna say. Among the submissions, several works stand out to me most, in particular, those work address or imply climate changes or global warming issues. caused by human activities. The work focused on sustainability of global ecosystems. So I'm going to kind of, I'll give you some examples of work. Coral reefs, a series of brooches by Daewon Jung depict the transitional process of coral bleaching. And Untilted by Rachel Shelton, she stated in her description, this body of work explores human disengagement from nature. The work was constructed to convey mourning for the loss of reverence and respect of a planet. So also go to Lotus Pot by Mary Lee Ray and the Cicada Necklace by Sandra McWin. And the last, Super Bloom Bees by, this is actually same person, Charlene Abdel-Manem, and her sgraffito beads are depicted in the necklace form.
I also thought there was a very strong narrative in the work that was submitted. I think generally there was like an overwhelming sense that sort of like the conceptual and the narrative was quite a strong interplay. I particularly liked so I've got the name. Martha Banya's, her piece, The Figure with the Flames. I think that sort of speaks for all of us at the minute. There's quite a lot of sort of like very emotive work, very sort of meaningful pieces. And the other piece that I particularly liked was the piece with the painted. I like this one with the pieces that look like trees, the birch trees, and the other one, which that also speaks, like you were saying, Mi-Sook, about the environment and sort of ecology. And the other one I like particularly is the figure, the picture of the, is it John Lewis, the figure piece. But yeah, generally there was a lot of very strong work. And Sharon Massey was the name I was thinking of. Her piece is very sort of very bold, and you know, the piece that's called The Whistleblower, that sort of is there. You don't need any interpretation; it's there for you, which is very strong work. So yeah. And
addition to those aspects, I can clearly see there are numbers of work in impressing their personal feelings, thought in COVID situation. For example, 2020 and State of Emergency by Natalie Elia. And she stated like this piece consists of the images and conversations that have crossed my path on these past few months. Uncertainty, confusion, impatience, silence, and problem solving, and counting the days. Another example from Nicholas Hessen, titled Still Beating the Heart. He say, current events have shocked the very ground we stand on, which caused me to look into my own heart and discover myself. This piece of my own heart that I have put up for display in order to show the importance of one's body in physical and cognitive form, and as well as Oven Door number 5 view by Helen Hosking, and as well as Crowded by Martha Venus. I think those works are quite interesting to me.
I was, going to ask all of you if you felt that, our present situation, COVID first and foremost, but also our political and social situation guided any of the work. And it's good that Judith Engelson's work was up on the screen. If it guided any of the work that was submitted, because it seems that at the present moment, with everything that is happening around us, we can't help but to have that sort of seep into our everyday, of course, and our creativity. So you've talked a little bit about that already, but did you feel that because of those because of COVID, because of the political and social situation, do you feel that some of the work this year was, it wouldn't look like this any other time of year had this exhibition, took place, or, last year or next year, that the work this year is very sort of timely and current and of the now. So any thoughts on that?
Personally, I think it is, because it is like the litmus paper of what's happening. But in a way, it's also a longer seep-in than that, because quite a few of the works were from 2017. So yes, it's a yes and no. It's a sort of test of what's happening over the past 3 years as much as it is in this past 12 months. What do you think, Mi-Sook?
Yes, I do. I don't think all of like fortunate to have perfect studio setting. So I think it's really generous. The Enamel Guild Northeast giving those a timeline for past 3 years' work. So there are great numbers of work, like Ruth mentioned, from dated 2017.
Yeah, it's so complicated, because I think that I don't think every single piece of artwork has to be a commentary on our social situation, on our political situation. So I think that there were works that were submitted that were actually just sort of quite beautiful in their own right, that weren't telling us a story about that. And I think what I find complicated is approaching those works as they are, in the sense that our situation right now feels so dramatic that it's hard to look at everything else and not and kind of understand its value. I think about this a lot in terms of art of any kind, and there were just some really beautiful pieces. And so certainly, I think about Sharon Massey's whistleblower piece as like a kind of a beginning of this. That piece stood out to us. It was red, it was bold, and specifically in her statement referenced something. And then Lillian Jones, this piece here, I mean, it's not talking about that, and yet it has a beauty of its own. And so as a juror, it's very interesting to what is the criteria that we're looking at these things with? How are we valuing them? I know that for me, I find that very engaging. And I think that I understand from speaking with artists that not every artist is necessarily going to address the social, I guess we call them social issues, but the social issues that are happening in the world. And sometimes you're looking at nature, or your eye is looking for a reprieve, and they're making work that relates to that.
Yeah. Anyone else before I sort of move off that topic? Ruth, is there anything you wanted to add, or?
No, I agree with Sienna, because it's such, I mean, like we looked at 371 pieces. So, and within that, there are actually different categories. So it's actually very hard to generalize over that amount of work. Only to say, like Sienna's saying, there's so much beauty and so much content, and it was all excellent. We had quite a job, didn't we, sort of in trying to sort of thin it down into an exhibition, because we wanted so many different things. So yeah, it was interesting.
I wanted to add one thing, that there were a few pieces, not a lot, but that dealt with sort of identity. And in fact, one of the pieces that we chose, I think it was Alejandra's, actually kind of deals with that identity, but also gender. I noticed that there were a bunch of pieces that navigated that sort of pathway, which I'm guessing 5 years ago, we wouldn't have seen work that navigated it so obviously, or told the story in their statement so obviously. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
You're tasked with such a difficult job. I mean, I think, being a juror is always really challenging, because yes, there's criteria that you have to meet as you're thinking about this, exhibition and looking at such a range of work. I wonder, were there any discoveries for you? Is there anything that, whether it was a new artist or, a new work, or perhaps even a new way to use enamel? Was there any moment where you thought, like, this is completely new, this is completely new to me? Any discoveries for you all?
And I can answer the question from my observation. The CAD CAM, there's an increasing interest using those technology. Including photo transfer and laser engraving or cuttings, those shapes. I think that's quite interesting aspect. And also there are a good number of enamelists to utilize found object as their art supplies and take on a variety of manifestations.
Ruth, Sienna, what about you?
I can't see Sienna, so I'll go for sorry, Sienna. For me, it was the use of narrative. It wasn't just about, I think I've put in my statement that it's not just about beauty, that the message was quite important this year. I mean, this piece by Ariella, I love that one too. In fact, that, that's sort of, there's so much content in that, with its sort of the eyes and the watching gear, and on the back there's the names of the Instagram tags and things like this, and there's another piece there with the eyes. So the content this year seemed very strong. It wasn't just not that just, it's a sort of potent word, isn't it? We are all driving for beauty and all striving to be very perfect in the material. And I mean, Amy's work there with the plique-à-jour. And enamel is such a diverse material. We are sort of very rich in technique. And I don't think there's a material that will do that. So consistently you can have, a piece that's pure white or pure black, or it will be, like you're saying, Mi-Sook, you can laser etch it, you can paint it. There's so many things that you can do with enamel. So it's about, for me, it was about that, the breadth, I think is the word I'm searching for, and also the technology is involved, so you've got the photo etching. Yeah, I think it's just that the absolute diversity, the whole thing. So yeah, Sienna, how about you?
I mean, you ask if you've seen if anything sort of stood out as something. I feel like the piece that we put at the top of the list, the face, at least to my knowledge, I mean, I really just haven't seen anyone contemporary working with enamel that way. It really stood out. I remember jurying it. It was very specific. I was very glad. I was, pleasantly surprised and very glad when at the end of the game, sort of that piece had risen to the top, because it wasn't something I had seen before, and it referenced history in a way that I really liked. And I don't know that I often see something that I haven't seen before at this point, and it's nice. It's a surprise, and I don't think that something that I have that means that it's right. This piece, I don't think that means that it's just because I haven't seen before. It doesn't necessarily put it at the top. There's lots of other reasons, but it's refreshing.
One of the things that I really enjoy about this exhibition is that it is both a mix of jewelry and objects. And I think that is, to me, what's always really exciting. And again, like, even going through the slideshow here, like you were all saying, there is such a range, right? And even though enamel, has been practiced for thousands of years, there are, continuously artists that, push the boundaries and do something really fresh and innovative with it. And so it's really nice to see, even looking at the different forms and, how artists are sort of continuing as I said, to really push the boundaries of it. So with that, it's really exciting. What are your suggestions for, for applicants when you look at this work? I mean, is there ever a moment when you think, oh, I wish, that image of that piece I could see on the body, or, oh, I wish, I can hold that piece or something? Like, what are your sort of, what's going through your mind when you're looking at work? And I guess that's not even necessarily just applies to this, to this exhibition. But generally speaking, I mean, I know, all three of you have had so much experience looking at work. What is your sentiment? What are the sort of tips that you would offer? It's up to you who wants to go first. And Mi-Sook, would you?
As a teacher, it's my habit. Like, I took the note. So I got 5 different aspects in here. So, I took this note for my future references. So I'm going to share them with you here. Number 1, obviously, read the prospectus carefully to meet the specific submission requirement. And number 2, ensure the images submitted represent your work best for review. Number 3, make sure your submission is about the topic and the purpose of the exhibition. Number 4, write up all the information you will be putting into the submission. And this is last, number 5, consider a title that reveals something deeper about your work. That's it. That's from me.
Okay, from me, I'll say the obvious, because it is obvious and sometimes it doesn't happen. Make sure your photograph's in focus. It's also nice to see a sense of scale in the pieces. If you think of the piece by Sharon Massey called The Whistleblower, if you know the person's work, then you can understand the scale that you're looking at. If you don't know the work, and quite a lot of the work I didn't know, you're searching for clues, you're searching for sort of some idea of how big this piece is. Is it small, large? Is it an earring? Is it a wall piece? Sometimes with a photograph, you wouldn't actually know. So if you do get the chance to show different photographs, put something in that has a sense of scale, or if it's a piece that is an installation piece, a sense of placement. If it's a body piece, a sense of placement on the body. And the big thing that we sort of looked at on photographs, you can see the work and you can perhaps understand that it's a beautiful piece of work, but the photograph doesn't show it off to its best. So if the photograph's got a cluttered background, sometimes pieces placed on a mirror can maybe look like an interesting image, but if there's too much information in that image, then that's going to distract from your work. So keep it simple, keep it clutter-free, and yeah. Sienna, I'll go over to you now.
I mean, I feel like you guys covered a lot of that. I think the scale thing really matters, especially when you're dealing with jewelry. I guess maybe sometimes with object you can understand it a little bit more. I mean, there's no reason that anyone in this day and age should have shitty pictures, really. Like it's offensive to people who are jurying if the images just aren't, in focus or good. And if you can't do it, find someone else to help you or get someone else's opinion. There's no reason not to, because you might, you owe it to the work, especially something like enamel that is so kind of time consuming. I also like to see pieces on the body if it's jewelry. I think, and strangely, one of the reasons I like to see pieces on the body is because I'm very curious about how the artist composes that image of the piece on the body. And this is something I've been thinking about a little bit lately. If it's set up in a very austere way, if they're out in nature, all of these things are actually giving me that much more information about what the artist thinks of the piece that they made, and then it infuses that piece with more information. Or at least that's how I see it. So it's just that much more information that you're giving your jurors. And it makes it, often makes it a lot more kind of interesting. I feel like, you know, for 1,000 years that we've said, everyone has always said, just make sure your images are good. I don't know that I can say much more than that. And if you're making work that is very traditional, right, very sort of a traditional piece of enamel jewelry, for example, you know, if you put that in a different context, like, you know, a piece that feels very traditional, that, you know, maybe is really expensive, has a lot of gold in it, but if you put that on a jean jacket, or, I mean, you don't have to do it that way, but, you know, there's ways to sort of play with our perceptions of it that I think can actually shift how we look and examine the work. Jeannie Pratt, this piece here, you know, it's a very traditional image. It's this gradiated background. We've seen it. We've seen it before. So I understand it. I look at it. I see this necklace, and I get what it is, and it gives me the information. Everything is in focus. But I wouldn't mind seeing that piece in action. And if jewelry activates on the body, then I'm starting to want to see some things, you know, in that context, I guess. So I don't think you have to do what I'm saying. I think you sort of have to do what Ruth and Mi-Sook said. So I'm just adding to that.
Yeah, I remember, Sienna, you mentioned over our conversation, the one of the submissions, the heart, the big heart. And those are really easy to see scale-wise, because the person, I think,
Lovely.
Nicholas Hansen.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think
The big heart necklace.
I think we lost Sienna for a minute. There she is. Yeah. Can you?
Sorry, I have a child doing homework right now. So such a Sunday night. So by the way, all artists, it's not just you who leave everything to the last minute.
But, you know, I think that's a very interesting point that Sienna brings up, actually, because somebody in the Q&A just referenced something quite similar. Because I agree, I think, especially when you're looking, right, so there were 377 pieces submitted to, you know, for the exhibition. And I think it's a really interesting point because, like with all art, right, you have things that are more conceptual, you have things that are more traditional, obviously. And I think it's really interesting to be able, you know, to place the work in context where you can sort of, you can understand the piece, I think, a little bit better, or, you know, it almost stands out differently, right? So, because by looking at all of this work, I think technically you can tell that it is all quite incredible and, you know, and very special. But because it's all so different, and because of the artist, you know, everyone is telling such a different story in such a different way, I think it is really interesting if that is also then told through the image itself as well. And I see we have,
You know,
go ahead.
I just wonder if, as we looked at all of these things, and there's a whole bunch of different styles, historical references, you know, lots of different artists from different backgrounds making the work that we're looking at, because this is the enamelist society, right, that we're looking at. You know, I wonder, and perhaps somebody else can speak to this, but is it looking at material specifically an outdated way to be jurying works or to be judging works? So comparing technique to technique, when, you know, over the past 20 years, there's been so many shifts in how people engage with craftsmanship and their work and the stories that they're telling. I don't know the answer to that, but I wonder, it feels limiting, because I think if you had said to me, what is the most beautiful object, right, or piece of jewelry or object that came through this jurying process, I don't think those top three pieces that we chose would be on that list. If you said, what is the most technically, you know, amazing piece, I don't know that those 3 pieces would be on the list. And every artist is approaching this from a different angle. And I, you know, I wonder if, and and this is how we chose to jury it, but I'm curious if the society, of which I'm not a part of, but decided to say, we're going to make this very specific, like we want you to enter in, like, you know, what is the most innovative use of enamel, or what is the most, anyway, I don't know. You guys are enamelists, so you know.
You saying to create categories, Sienna?
It's just hard. It's apples and oranges, some of these pieces.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a very broad and sort of diverse range of work, isn't it? I mean, if you were tasked to do this in your gallery, you would perhaps create a different system. Is that what you're saying?
I just think, I think that it leaves some things out. So I saw one of the other questions, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it was sort of like, how do the jurors, you know, think about these things? And the three of us are coming from completely different backgrounds and experiences. Mm-hmm. But I think, I mean, the pieces that rose to the top, right, rose to the top. Mm-hmm. So basically the way you jury something, in case people don't know, is everyone looks at the images, we give it a numbering system, and then they take that numbering system and they show us what our numbers are, and we choose to look at that, the top range of those numbers. It doesn't mean we don't, you know, roll back down and have conversations about much of the other work, but you have this sort of the top 10 or the top 20 or 25 pieces on a numbering system that are open for conversation. And they don't rise to the top if only one person likes them, or even if only two people vote for them. So it's a very sort of
it's democratic, isn't
democratic. Funny that word's difficult to come up with lately, but yes, a democratic process.
I think that's a reality. Like, you know, so anyhow, we cannot help it somehow. Or like, you know, withdrawn by some specific work. It's a very personal choices. And I think if you enter any exhibition or competition, it happens the same way too. To personal as a maker, I always drawn to those work. Absolutely, like we just seen those Pricaju, the cup, and those work, it's just mesmerizing me. Because I just quickly involve the process that particular artist through, and then it's just like wow me, like wow. And I cannot stop looking at how many hours this artist put their time and effort. So maybe because I'm an educator at the same time a maker.
Yeah, I think also that all the work's very personal, isn't it? It's, you know, everything. I think you say in your statement, Sienna, that the technicality, enamel is probably very sort of, it sort of falls foul of that in terms of the technical rises to the surface, in the fact that, you know, we all want, and I love that you said that it was that we have like a hierarchy in the technical aspect of things. I think that's quite pertinent. I think in the breadth of work that we have, you've got to start sort of valuing different aspects as well. So yeah, I think, you know, we're judging a pair of earrings against an object and a wall panel against something else. So you start finding different value systems to work with.
Yeah, and there were quite a few pieces that I know I had to ask. You guys were able to give me information about how things were made that I wouldn't have come to it with. And the fact that shifted, positive, negative, in between, whatever, the way that we looked at work, I think that's so interesting. And it's so specific to work that's about craftsmanship. I mean, I see it in the gallery all the time. And I wrote about it in my essay, and I like, you know, obviously it's me, I could have gone on forever about it, but how is this made is just the number one question constantly.
Yeah, even though we, I think as a jeweler, we did our best to select those three award pieces. But I also wonder if I really had opportunity seeing those all work in person.
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% positive or sure about I would go 3 same pieces. So I admit it.
Mm,
So
I
I'm gonna
agree.
kind of, yeah.
I mean, I think there's so many other really good pieces that it's actually hard to actually narrow it down to those 3, because there were so many others that were just as worthy. And that's, I can sort of sympathise with how you're feeling. And because there is such a lot of great work in there, it was a strong year.
Yeah.
Like in a little vest we just seen, we only see from 2 sides, but this is absolutely, you can appreciate from 360 degrees. What if I just really seen in person? And I was like, what am I missing in here?
Yeah. I mean, Linda K. Moses's work just came up, and I think like, okay, so this is on some sort of a snake chain thing. Like, what does this feel like in my hand? Is it heavy? Is it light? Is the enameling done well? And I know that myself, there's work I've seen online that I really like, and I see it in person. I'm like, oh my God, like that's not really well done. And that makes a difference to me, or vice versa. So, but we are where we are, right? I mean, images, things have been juried by imagery forever and ever and ever. So, you know,
and that's why the image is so important at the minute.
Yes, that's why you need good pictures.
We haven't got that haptic, we haven't got that tactility in looking at something. You know, you can't feel the smoothness of something or the roughness or the texture. And so much about enamel is the surface. It's all about whether it's a sugarified surface or whether it's matte or shiny or transparent. There's so much richness in the surface of the actual enamel. So we're sort of, it's like judging with your hands behind your back, really, isn't it? It's sort of not having all the information.
So one of the questions that just came in from Tina Chisena is, in the initial jurying, did the EGNE tell you how many pieces needed to be accepted to make the show out of the 377 that you looked at? Tina's also the one who asked that earlier question about you know, how you pick the prize winner, and did it have, you know, how hard it was to have the consensus. So as a reminder, if you do have questions, please submit them through the Q&A and we'll be happy to answer them. But so who wants to answer that question? How many pieces, did you know how many pieces needed to be accepted to make the show?
No.
Yeah, we did not discuss before we evaluate each piece, what each piece is. Yeah, we had no clue, and we did not see any names of those submissions, and we did not discuss before we have fully completed our individual reviewing process. So we did not set those numbers at all.
Let's see.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that we didn't know the names of anybody. And the sort of the top 100 sort of became evaluated once we'd, I mean, and we did have quite a large middle ground. There was quite a lot of pieces that were, you know, there was a sort of strength in sort of quite a body of work. So it was actually quite hard to actually sort of work out what was needed and what would work and what wouldn't.
I mean, I actually am so curious to know what you guys chose as opposed to what I chose, and like it never quite works that way. Because I was like a little harsh. I felt like I started out with a lot of, you know, if it's 0 to 5, I did like 0, 0, 0, 5, 4, 0, 0, 5, 4, 1, 0, 5, 4. Like I was sort of ignoring the 2s and 3s because, you know, when you're jury, you know, and then you can kind of go back and look at stuff. I think it just depends on how we engage in that. That's why in the end, the fact that like the things that I gave 4s and 5s to are the things that, you know, rose up to the top. You know, not always also the top 3 necessarily, but to the top. So, and I come from, I don't know how to make anything. I mean, you know, at all. And
but
you guys
got
know
such
how
a
to.
strong eye. I mean, you know more than us in terms of you're running a gallery and you've got your finger on the pulse of.
Sure, I look at things all the time, but I think, and maybe this is specific to enameling, how it is made affects. You know, I mean, Mi-Sook, you said this. I think you were talking about this piece we just saw. You look at this and it's plique à jour, right? I'm like, I don't even know how people do that. I mean, yes, I kind of do, but not a lot, right? I mean, I took a ceramics class once and I thought, oh my God, this is really so hard, you know, and I changed how I looked at ceramics. So,
yeah, like, you know, I clearly can see some submission. I'm not surprised they say I spent 6 months, maybe 2 months is just stoning down. I'm telling you that is the nature of their work.
yeah.
That's an interesting point. I was wondering if when you were jurying, was there a moment where, because you all bring something very different to the table and because you all look at work differently, was there ever a point, and well, Sienna, you sort of mentioned a little bit when it comes to the technical aspects of the work that, you know, but was there ever a point when you sort of looked at one another and said, okay, you know, I get, like, you know, I, like Mi-Sook, you were saying, you know, you can look at a piece and you can really sort of dissect it. You understand what the process was to how that piece was created. What were there any sort of, did you ever kind of turn to one another and say, you know, like, not what am I necessarily missing, but what do I need to know about this piece, kind of, you know, or can you give some insight? Yeah.
I specifically did. Yeah. I mean, there was a couple things that I was like, how is this made? Or is this a decal? Is this hand drawn? And then we talked a little bit about whether that matters or not. This spoon, this ladle that just showed up before. I mean, I think you guys did talk about, like, this is a beautiful piece of enameling, right? And I'm looking at it, what it does is it forces me to look that much closer. Right. And I might just be like, your eyes glaze over, you know, you see a lot of things. So I feel like I had to ask that question more often than you guys did, because you came to it with a different knowledge, you know. And I was, yeah. I mean, I think specifically, I don't think we need to name specific things, but I think, like, this concept of, and maybe this is a larger enameling conversation, but whether you're using decals or not seems to be a thing.
Yeah, I actually did want to, when you mentioned the decals versus the drawings, I wanted to ask you about that, because that is something we briefly discussed, you know, when we were sort of preparing for this conversation. Do you want to weigh in on that? And you know, Mi-Sook, Ruth, Sienna, on that sort of decals versus drawings, or anything more specifically?
I think the issue is that decals are all good. I think decal work is beautiful, and it's absolutely wonderful, and it has a technology of its own, which is very important. And it has a history of its own that's very important. Where we had sort of like the odd issue was that we felt that the decal should be your own. You shouldn't be borrowing an image, so the image should be something that you've created yourself, and it doesn't matter how, whether you've drawn on computer or if you've drawn and then sent the images away, but it just should be your own image. You shouldn't, it should be something that's, you have ownership, you have artistic prowess over, really. Yeah. Do you think so too, Mi-Sook?
Yeah, question is here, it's not about using those technology, vice versa, like using your own hands. I think technology is extension of our ability from the hands, and issues I have is on their creativity. So, like, you know, we are use of technology as our I can say, like, you know, method of creation, not just depending on let them doing our own work. So I'm offensive those images without any sort of a historical context in it, just borrow from others. So that was kind of issues I had. But from the beginning, every single step, they use their own unique creativity, whether use a technology or just like using traditional hand tools. I have no problem at all. I mean, is that answer to you? Like, you know, we are. sort of looking for those work.
I mean, if we're looking at a piece of artwork on a wall, you know, what we call, you know, something that's in a museum, a piece of artwork that you go and see, right? Not jewelry, not object, not anything that's sort of sucked into the world of how is this made, right? I think we come at it in a very different way than we do with this sort of work. And I question that a little bit. I don't mind if something is has been made by someone else, or it's a drawing from someone else. I kind of just don't want to know it, right? I don't want it to stop me from experiencing the work. So that might be in some cases that your form is so engaging, or that you've altered the imagery, or that you're using it to tell me a story that imagery didn't tell me before. I think that's maybe what I want. And there was actually a specific piece I can think of that I think used a decal way that like really worked for me. This is the suds, the box that pours out the stuff. I don't know whose work it was. And that I think it was a decal, or it was an image that had been used with the craftsmanship on the piece and the box and the miniaturization of it and the story that it was telling really worked for me. So I felt like it transcended the use of the image the way that it had been used before. And I think that's what I want, is like some sort of transcendence.
So a comment from the audience, from Janley Jaggard. She says, not so much a question, but an observation, in that enamel workshops present according to technique to be taught. I find it intriguing that enamel is unique in this respect. Other workshops would typically be based on materials or maybe subject. Why is enamel technique the apparent focus and not the aesthetic? So Mi-Sook, Ruth, Sienna, who would like to answer that?
Sorry, I keep getting cut off.
Oh.
So can you repeat the question?
Yeah, could you?
So yes, of course. And also, if it's in the Q&A, you can see it there as well. But when it comes to enameling, essentially, and I guess I'm paraphrasing. When it comes to enameling, why is the technique the apparent focus and not the aesthetics?
I'm not sure that it is in this instance. I think because we are judging quite a broad range, technique is assumed that there is good technique and that we are looking at excellence, and there's such a broad range of techniques that you're having to look at. It's just very, I mean, like Dale, just looking at Avril's eutectic work against a paint, a picture of the eye or the robin, not a robin but the little bird, and it is so incredibly diverse that we're the beauty and the craftsmanship is already there. So it's a sort of intuitive, responsive sort of feeling to the work. What do you think, Lisa?
I think medium and techniques, those are the must to as a vehicle to express our ethical or other issues. So this is each different enamel techniques is required tremendous time and effort. Mm-hmm. And I'm focused on Limoges painting enamel. It's been more than 15 years. I'm still learning, and I have no time to learn other enamel technique at all. Mm-hmm. So that much, like I can tell those workshops and constantly sort of teach those workshop the techniques, but does not mean we are not emphasized on aesthetics or other issues. We do.
So just as a follow-up, Janley said, the question is not so much about what's being shown here, but about enamels in general. So I think, but I think you all
I
answered
think it's
it.
not just enamels though. I mean, I think
Yeah.
any sort of skill, you know, you're learning a skill. So you learn
Yeah.
the skill and then you go off and you do something with it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that, you know, if you want to take a class on aesthetics, you take a class on aesthetics. So I think anyone who thinks that they're going to go and learn how to enamel technique, that doesn't mean you're either good at it or that you're making good choices when you're making the work. It might mean you own that skill as part of your repertoire of what you can pull from when you want to.
Yeah, I would just say one of my former professor told in the class, and being a good maker is a must, not a choice of artist. It should be beyond than good maker. So good maker means mastery of techniques.
Yeah. So we have a comment here from Linda K. Moses, and she said, just as she was commenting on Sienna, what you had said earlier about wanting to hold and touch the work. She said that I think that enameled work almost seduces one into wanting to feel the textures, the surfaces, the weight with the hands and not just with the eyes.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely on that page.
So before we conclude this evening's conversation, someone had also requested if it's possible to once again show the work of the 3 artists who were chosen for the Jurors' Choice Awards. Is that something that we can do again? It sort of requires us to pause the main slideshow.
Yeah.
So just give us a second.
Can you see that?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Perfect.
You can see it? Okay.
Yeah. So that's Alejandra Salinas, who was in third place?
Yes.
Okay. And then Myra Mimlich Gray in 2nd place. And then Ariella Hart-Even in 1st place. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, thank you all. And I see now the chat just blowing up, but thank you all so very much. And everyone joining us this evening. Thank you so much to the jury, Mi-Sook Hur, Ruth Ball, and Sienna Patti, and of course to the Enamel Guild of Northeast for this annual exhibition. We thank you all, and the exhibition will be up on the website. And so with that, good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks,
Good night.
Bella.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bella.
Thank
Kim,
you.
bye.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.